Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob. I am your Sensei Al Bob. I am your griot, right? Here to tell you a story. And right off the bat, this program is just for entertainment. It has nothing to do with believing anything. In fact, don't believe a word I say. And this show is not for immature minds, right? Immature minds are those minds that are selfish in motivation, nihilist and hedonist and sociopathic, right? Um, and it can be of all ages, right? And usually, uh, human beings from the age of birth to 6 are very sensitive, like a sponge. Now, they're very innocent, they're very loving, they're very generous, they're very gracious, they're close to love's co creation, because that's where they just came from. And so they need to be protected. So, best they not be watching this show. Then, young humans from the age of 6 to 15 are very impressionable, and they also should not be watching this show. Now, parental guidance is suggested, right? But those parents have to be those with an open mind. Right? Now, I don't believe in anything, but I don't disbelieve in anything. Thus, you have the alpha and the omega of understanding. You have a Venn diagram in the middle where you don't believe in anything, and then you don't disbelieve anything. And right in that sweet zone is a place where you can make up your own mind. The question is, can you? Will you? Or are you addicted? Addicted to that belief, addicted to fear, addicted to your ego, addicted to nihilism, hedonism. Now, it's okay to enjoy your body. It's okay to enjoy a piece of cheesecake. It's okay to enjoy a cup of coffee. Right? It's okay to enjoy anything within the physical realm. It's when you get addicted. That's when your ego takes, that immature when it's only about you. When all you can think about is you. Is when those, bad words, bad thoughts, bad things come in about, oh, I feel so bad. I feel so anxious. It's that person's fault. It's that person. They did it. You did it. When you can't realize that your life, you are the decider, that you are not only deciding, but you're responsible for whatever occurs to you, right? And that's why I have this very interesting 3 rules. My grandma had 28, and there's a lot of them that I go by, like grandma's uh, rule 22 was never work for anyone who does not need you when you need that paycheck. Right? They need you more than you need that paycheck, and they're going to pay you whatever you want. Right? They will let you do that job the way you want to. They will not interfere with you. They will not put a um, person above you who's a subordinate, right? Who doesn't even understand what you're doing, because they understand that you are a valuable asset. When you can, whatever you do is a value, then you never have to be taken advantage of, right? So that's rule number 22. Grandma's rule number 22. Never take on a job, a JOBWORK, right? Both those, job, job, equals work equals prison, right? Meaning when you take a job, that's because you're desperate to, have financial, what you might think is security, but it's not. You know, please, not even close. You know, if you are just a pro, just a cog in a machine, then, that's it. But you don't have to be the nihilist. You don't have to be, I'm the boss. It's all about me. No, that's not very much fun, What we were put on this earth, right? Why we have this mud puppet, right? Which is not you. You are not your body, right? So why worry about how you look, how fat you are? I weighed almost 600 pounds, Did I worry about it? No. Maybe I should have, but no, because I could still move around. I mean, I could still dance better than anybody. One time, actually, when I had been really sick, right, and died in the plate of spaghetti, then was really sick, and then I basically so the next winter, right? So 2014, I died in a plate of spaghetti, right? And actually, it wasn't the winter; it was the fall. And I stayed there. Yes, that's what it was. And so I came. I died in a plate of spaghetti around September, October. I, the guy I was working for took me down to his because I said, they wanted to crack my chest, cut my legs off, do quadruple bypass, and that was, that would have killed me. So, that would meant I had no faith in love's co-creation, right? So what I did need was a colonic, right? I needed to get that shit out of my colon. I needed to have an endocrinologist tell me really what was going on with my organs, right? I really needed a dietitian, and I really needed an acupuncturist, and I really needed an herbalist. So he got me all those, right? Brought them down to the Keys, and I spent 2 weeks in his beautiful casa on the Florida Keys, right on the ocean, and they got me to a point where I could do the thing he wanted me, right? I negotiated the understanding. I got everyone kumbaya, and then he was good enough to send me back down to his place to, recuperate for another 4 weeks or a month or two. So around, um, oh, February, right? You know, he sent me on, and I had this place to stay in. Um, that was I had a sweetie. I'd gotten rid of my place in the Keys, my place in the Keys, and I got rid of my place in Stewart. And my parents had died in '08, so that was no longer there. But I still had friends, so I stayed with a friend, and um, and that was good. And then I rolled on to my friends in Port St. Lucie, right? And I stayed with my good friend who's an amazing artist. And he's, if you go back to the early shows, you'll see my friend. He, in the middle of, is, that people who think they're rich and entitled and think they're exceptional. I'm the greatest. I mean, I don't understand. I've been doing this forever, and I only get 3 views on my. I don't understand. I'm the greatest. I'm better than anybody in all of this. Music, writing. I can write a screenplay. Ah! Now that is a nihilist, right? And the word that is escaping me is think of Donald Trump. And everyone constantly uses this word to describe him. And it starts with an N. So, and um, not just a naughty boy. And usually these nihilists, these people who think they're exceptional, and basically think they're entitled to everything, and there's no reason for anything to not, they don't understand, um, what life's about. Life's about the we and me. Life's about, uh, what makes us happy is when we make others happy, right? When we curse, like a demon, when we're demonic, and say pray Jesus at the same time. I believe in God and Jesus. Demonic, 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 demonic. I believe, no, sorry. The way you believe in God and Jesus is how you act, how you treat people, especially when you're stressed, when you lash out and are cruel and mean and vile and make God want to throw up. Why do you think he kept, you know, whacking the human populace on the planet Earth? Why do you think we had the Great Flood? Why do you think he turned everyone in salt? And it wasn't just because they were screwing and just no, it's not a big deal. It's part of life. Sex is part of it, and you're not you know especially men. Men are like dogs. They want to screw everything, right? Now, when men have something deeper in their heart rather than their nihilist, needs, right? And addictions. And see that nihilism is a version of addiction, right? And whenever you have and certain uh, alkaloids, cocaine, crack, meth, alcohol, tobacco, coffee, of those five that I just named, or seven, however many I named, the two most intense ones are caffeine and tobacco. Now, the other ones, the alkaloids that are like meth and crack, they are so, you know, get a hold of you that in actuality, you can see, even when you're crazed, you can see that this is not the best, right? I remember I was in the rock and roll world, right? I grew up, in 1966. I basically was walking along 6th Street to go fix something, and a gigantic explosion happened. It was right between, 2nd Avenue and what is where, what you call it, is Cooper Union, whatever that street is. And I kind of was coming from my friend who was a sculptor at Cooper Union, and I had visited him, and then my mentor who ran the alternative technology department that I was part of, I went and saw him and talked to him a little bit, and then I was walking down 6th Street, this explosion, smoke, and coils of wire went flying through the air, right, and all kinds of you know mayhem was going on. And, I had my bag of electrical tools, and I stopped and I watched. And it was right at it was a loading platform going into a theater. It was right onto a theater stage. And I'd been working in theaters already. And I'm just looking in there, and things are running around. And I see that over where the power distribution is on fire. And next to it is a big thing of grease. You hear grease paint, a big thing of grease. And that was starting to catch fire. And basically, somebody grabbed a big bucket of, had water, and was like throwing water on a grease fire, and just exploded into the air and started heading towards the, you know, the proscenium, right? And so I looked around, and it was a big friggin', fire extinguisher. Everyone's running around. No one sees the fires. I kind of walk up the steps onto the, platform. I pick up the fire extinguisher. I walk over with my tools. I put the tools down, and it was a foam one, not just the CO2. So it clung onto the fire. Put the fire out like that. You should never, ever, ever, you know, put water on a grease fire. And especially now, if all you have is water, I mean, first you try to smother it. You put a lid of a pot that covers it, that should take care of it. But if air gets at it from another direction, it'll still kind of, flame, but it'll be controlled. It won't reach up and set something else on fire. And if where it is metal, well, all it's going to do is burn up the grease. So if you're patient, and you put that lid on, and yes, there'll be a lot of smoke. All you have to do is open a a door or a window, and have the smoke go out. But if you throw water on it, water, oil, and fire causes an explosion, right? And anyway, so I put it out, and then I go open, but the electric distribution thing is still on fire. So I kind of go to the main, pull out the main, pull out the fuses, and then I still have some left in the fire extinguisher, and put it out. So Bob Goddard, the guy who started, the founder and CEO of Pig Lights and Joshua Light Show, the two most famous, iconic lighting companies, theater lighting companies of the quote unquote, alternative music of the 60s and early 70s. That was Bob. And this house was had been a theater in the 20s of the version of the fun-loving theater, not Broadway, but the other. Pop into my mind what it was, but it was before TV, before radio, before movies. This was, and it had like comedians and jugglers and girls dancing and music. It wasn't a cabaret. It was, it'll pop into my mind. But anyway, that's what that house was built for. It was a pretty big house of about maybe 2,800. Right, had a big theater here, and they had a big, up there in the peanut gallery, right? And so basically I saved the building. And the owner of that was a man named Billy Graham. And Billy Graham was one of the greatest rock and roll producers, there ever was. And so anyway, both of those guys were there, and they were like, didn't know what to do. But I, a young man of 16, just kind of walked up the steps, saw that no one was people were throwing water on an electric fire that was being fueled by grease. And I knew better than that. And so I saw a big fire extinguisher, and it actually had wheels. It was that big. And I rolled it over to the fire. And again, it was at foam rather than just CEO. I mean, just instead of carbon dioxide, it was foam. So it stuck on to the fire, right, and put it out immediately, right? And I, saved the electric system thing, right? And I then proceeded to take where there was where there could have been continued fire, meaning from the disconnect, there's a trough, right, and it distributes current into distribution panels. And so I took off the covers of the trough and to see if the wires were on fire, and they weren't, but they were pretty toasty. They were not, advisable to be used again, right? And then I took over there was 2 distribution panels, and they were all knife switch and plug fuses, right? And I started to take that all apart and see, and that was pretty much destroyed. And by that time, the owner of the business, Billy Graham, and Bob Goddard were right next to me, going, "Kid, is it okay?" And I said, "Nope, has to be, everything needs to be replaced." And the guy goes, "Oh, were you an electrician?" I said, "Well, what do you think?" He goes, "You're an angel of mercy. That's what you are, kid. Do you want to work here?" I said, "Depends on how much you pay me and how much authority I have and how much you'll let me do the job." And both those guys look at each other and go, "You're hired." So I said, "Okay, there's a supply house just down the road. Anybody here got a car? I was going to go fix something, but we got a phone. I call my boss and tell him that I have an emergency. And he goes, so you can tell your boss that you have an emergency that's not his? You work for an electrician? I said, yeah, I have been since I was 9. You're how old are you, kid? 16. Yeah. So I've been working for that guy for, 6 and 2 makes, what's that make, kids? 8 years, right? So I was such a good electrician that they let me go fix things without any grown up. I was considered a grown up by Grandpa Stahl, by Mike, my real, not my biological father, but the man who treated me more like a father should treat his son, right? I mean, he loved me unconditionally. He never got mad at me because I always listened to what he said. And then if I had a question about it, I said, so how do you want me to do this? And they loved the fact I did that, right? So I was I mean, they had lots of employees. I mean, Mike, that was a union house. His uptown house had, 80 guys, right? All union electricians. And they drove him crazy because they thought they knew what they were doing and they didn't. And Grandpa, downtown shop, basically fixed things, things that were built in from the year 0 to 1940 and still kind of needed to be used until, either the building fell down or, like we did all the electric work. He wired the Woolworth building, right? And everything was like from the, 1890s, right? And so, I was in that building. I had keys to that building. That building, the Woolworth building, is truly amazing because it's basically designed by Masons. It was the first building to be called the skyscraper was, a Masonic lodge. You go through the front door, and the entrance lobby was like a Masonic lodge, and there were all kinds of Sitchins everywhere, Masonic symbols everywhere, and they had all these gargoyles all over it, and the faces were all of the Masonic leadership and the architects and the engineers and all of them, because they were all Masons, all of them, right? So I had a pretty good experience. I was already at 16 a guy who worked for people who valued me, and so they paid me. And they paid me so much money that basically they, not my parents, but they did the parental thing. They got me a Social Security card, and they got me a, checking account, and they put the money straight in there. And I never wrote checks. It was before debit cards, and they gave me cash on Fridays. They put money in that account, and they gave me cash that I could spend, right? And that's how much value they saw of me, right? Hello, Sandra. Good to see you, my sister. And so, and that's how I got the job, Fillmore East, right? And so, Billy Graham, he had a car, so we drove down to Vica. We got all the stuff, and Billy paid Frank in cash, and Frank was like, "Yeah, I like this. You can come back here," because this was a real electric supply. It wasn't Lowe's, and the average person couldn't walk off the street and get anything there. You either had to be, a licensed master electrician or a union. Had your union card, because that house was a union house, and so. But because I knew Frank since I was 9, and Frank was my other father. He really loved me, that guy. He loved me, because he gave me credit when I was 11 years old, unlimited credit. I mean, I could get thousands of dollars of electric supplies and go do my own jobs. And I was, given authority by Grandpa and Mike to do it. So they had the licenses, and their company was insured and bonded, and in itself was an LLC that was licensed. That it was the most authoritarian electric contractor in the fucking world, right? And they were my grandpa and my dad, right? And Frank was my other dad, right? And I had a lot of dads, whereas my father wasn't my dad. I had nothing to do with any of my family, my brothers and sisters, or my mother or my father, from 6 months old till I was 7. That's when I went back to their house, and I was there for, oh, I don't know. How old are you when you were going to first grade? 8, 9, right? So I got there at 7. I went to, within a year and a half, I went to first grade, and within, oh, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, Sister Holy Roller Skate, the milkmaid of death, an Auschwitz torturer, um, murdered me. She crushed my esophagus, broke my jaw, broke this orbit, broke the little bones in my ear, and smushed my head, right? And so I spent the next 6 months in a hospital recuperating, under Dr. Black's, and she was, my guardian angel mother, my grandmother, who was my father's mother, when I stuck a knife in the electric socket, and I was going, ooh, this is kind of fun. Yeah, ooh, I like this. But I wasn't grounded, so I was upload to ground. And my youngest sister came and ratted me out. Mommy, I'll be pluggy boom boom, And so, that was Piggy. And she always ratted me out. She also tried to kill me. She tried to poke my eyes out with a metal bunny. She got on Easter, she got this like little bunny that had a wheelbarrow and you put, candy in it, and she got that. And, she picked that thing up and tried to put those 2 bunny ears that were sticking straight up right into my eyes, and she got me in the head. Right. And then she kicked me and pushed me down and tried to drown me with a bucket of black paint. And my mother, and this is while I'm an infant, my mother just threw me in the bathtub. I could have drowned. And she was more concerned about her white, virginal carpet that they just put down on the living room. And that's where Piggy tried to drown me with a black paint. Have no idea what she got a bucket of black paint, but she was like pouring it down my throat, waterboarding me with black paint. Anyway, so that's when my grandma, after all of that, my grandma came and took me away. So from 6 months old to 7, I was with my grandma in her apartment in Harlem, and I grew up in Harlem. And it was the most amazing place to grow up because it wasn't all black people. Second Avenue, there was different nationalities all up Second Avenue, and different smells. There's not just the Italian neighborhood, but the Sicilian neighborhood, the Roman neighborhood. All the different parts, Bologna, all of the different places that was Italy was along Second Avenue. Same thing with Poland and Germans and Lithuanians and Jews and you name it, they were all along there. The center, that was black, like from 75th Street all the way up to, the Hudson. So there was the East River on the east side and the Hudson River on the west side. And there was this thing called Harlem River that connected the two. And that's what made New York City an island. And so from about 78th Street up to where the Harlem River is, right along Broadway and 8th Avenue, those are the two big avenues that so it was 5th Avenue that kind of mushed into Broadway above 31st Street, And so I grew up on that. My grandma, when I could walk, and basically, when I was a baby, I still remember this. So my mom she wasn't breastfeeding me. She was giving me this stuff called formula, that, and I was sick, and that she kept me in the sunroom, which, the first 3 weeks had no heat whatsoever. It was like, a porch outside that had glass around it. And my Uncle Steve, who was in charge of running, he was the engineer of Idlewild, which became Kennedy. And so he brought his plumbers over, and he put a gigantic radiator along that glass wall. And it was like, and then he put a new boiler in, and or at least made it work really well. And the first radiator to get the hot water off that boiler was the one in the sunroom. And he put the little thermostat up there. And so it was like, because to keep the rest of the house, you had to really crank the thermostat. And my dad, was cheap. So my Uncle Steve did it for free. And he wasn't going to, he said, well, put it over there. And he said, fuck no. And when I came home, and my mother had me, her umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck, and she was strangling me, as she did with the other two that came before me. There were 4 kids there, and then there were 2. She's Catholic, and she likes to fuck, and so my dad had a schlong. And so they were pounding it away all the time. And they're Catholic. You're supposed to. You're married, you pound away. Get as many kids as you can. Now, they shouldn't have been parents, And they weren't like mean or cruel or any of the. They just weren't, as is about 80% of the people in the United States shouldn't be parents, right? Anyone who's white, Anglo-Saxon, been here for 2 or 3 generations shouldn't be parents, right? The folks, the Mexicans coming over the border, great parents. Anybody coming from a foreign land, great parents. Pretty much. At least 70% of them, right? 30%, maybe not so much. So that was my early days. So, and they brought me home about 4 weeks after I was born. And I was, this like, infant, really small, not your basic baby, about that big. I was really sick. My esophagus had been, because the umbilical and the 2 moron doctors who were trying to deliver me were using salad tongs to pull me out, right? And, they were about to pop my head off like a tick. And basically, Dr. Black, a female who was not really, these guys were like, 6 foot tall, and they were smoking. I could taste the taste of, my mother was smoking. She's, having a baby, and she is like stoned on her ass and smoking in the delivery room. And the doctors are smoking in the delivery room. And, Dr. Black comes in to observe, and she's the first human to realize what's needed in modern medicine is a real dynamic of a woman representing a woman's vagina. Because there were all these men who were gynecologists. They were playing with women's hoo-hoos. Ooh, look at this thing. Ooh, let's play with that. Ooh, look at that. Ooh, And so and that was the AMA's version of being a gynecologist. Ooh, let's play with this thing, right? And then the poor young lady or woman could not, if they were black or poor, well, we're just going to sterilize you because it's better for you. Well, in the long run, probably was, but it's not really what is known as ethical, right? So, the two morons that came before me, Kenny and Billy, were that's what they're going to name them, and their heads, when the umbilical wrapped, my mom's umbilical was like a python, and it kind of, both those little babies got their head popped off like a tick. You'd think 3rd time those guys might not try to use the salad tongues. So Dr. Black, just kicked one guy in the leg and he fell down. She pushed the other away, and she pushed me back into my mother's uterus and moved me around, and then uncurled that and left me in my mother and took the cigarette out of my mom's mouth and put oxygen on my mother's face and hit her with a little nitrous oxide and kind of knocked her out. And that got to me, and I was like, yeah, I like this. Yeah, I'm trying to find the humor in all of this. And, she waited a while. Then she shot a super duper amount of oxygen, had my mom breathe that for about 20 minutes. So all that oxygen would get into me. And then when she pulled me out, I was no longer a blue baby because the circulation of the umbilical was able to get the blood enriched with oxygen into my body. She took me out, she snipped it, she clipped it, she put a hemostat on there and wrapped me up, swallowed me. It took me back to her. She was the first to have a special room that was set up for infants that were premature, and she was one of the inventors of putting the child into an enclosed environment that's heated. And she was her little places for babies that were in stress not only were kept warm, but she could adjust the barometric pressure and what was in the air to breathe, right? And so she understood that, right? And she also had these little gloves that she could put in there, and she could put IVs and take blood, right? And so she could see what was going on in the infant right off the bat, right? So anyway, I spent, about 4 weeks under her care until I was able to breathe, and I was in fairly good shape to go home. My parents brought me home, and what did they do? They stuck me outside in this sunroom that had no heat and put me, instead of a crib, they put me in a dresser drawer that was full of mold and dust and lead paint, right? And so when my Uncle Steve came to see me like a few days later, and he came in the afternoon after work, and it was like freezing in there, he was like, no. And so, he immediately got his plumbers, put that in there, got it, and he got his carpenters to build a crib for me that was made out of redwood, cedar, right? And I still, to this day, love the smell of cedar. So, that's the beginning of the show. It's about addiction, right? And what causes it, right? And no one's shown up yet. Yeah, I've gotten 3 thumbs up. That's really great. But I'm going to make some dinner and check my laundry and do a few other things. And I'll come back. Let's see. It's 5:30 now. So I'd say 6:30, 7 o'clock. But we're going to talk about addiction and what addiction is, and how it's connected to what's going on around us right now. The pandemic, the war in Ukraine, the collapse of the economic system, the collapse of the internet and the rest of all of our infrastructure, and the coming invasion of the alien agenda, right? Which we have been under pretty much since 160,000 years ago, if not a million years ago. So that's what tonight's show is going to be about. I look forward to seeing you, and I'll tell you more stories. I mean, I gave you a nice little interlude of my birth, and a nice little outline of my family, my weasel, brothers and sisters, and not to, I have to tell you this right off the bat. My parents are all right. I mean, they're dead, but they just shouldn't have been parents. They were okay people, They were a lot better than most and no worse than most, right? So they were that. But they were, when you are born into a sociopathic society, one that was still in trauma from the Civil War and from the, Spanish-American War and the Indian Wars. That's a lot of death. That from 1840 to 1900, at 60 years, the U.S. government and its authoritarian special relationship with the Anglo, Nazi, fascist, um, uh, crony capitalist, sociopathic, reptile civilization, that killed in that 60 years close to 200 million people. That's a lot of karma, baby. And if you are being represented by that country, that you're swimming in the swill of its propaganda and its media and its education system, baby, that's what you get. And now, from 1900 to today, so that's 120 years of the next fix, the next bit of addiction, the next, organized criminal government that we have, So I would suggest, in the next hour or two, go check out Dark Journalism's show that he did Friday, like today's Saturday, last night. That was a very good show. Go look at David Icke, his most recent one. When someone goes, David, you've been doing this for, giving the heads up to the human race about these reptiles for the last 40 years. And they've done everything to destroy your life. And yet, you're an amazing guy. You're not really traumatized by any of this. And aren't you scared they're going to kill you? And he basically said, so what's the worst that can happen? I die. I've died 7 times, so I kind of, have a leg up on death. I kind of know what it's all about, so I'm not that fearful of it. I know that the last time I died in 2014 in a plate of spaghetti, I basically had, my teachers on the other side, my mentors, my guides, basically said, you're doing a great job, but you still got another 20% to finish. Yes, you can come home right now. You can relax. You can take it easy, but you'll have to go back on the ring of karma and come back as a mud puppet. And yes, you will realize everything. You'll have a leg up on it, and but you'll be made to come back. It's much, again, what did I start off? Work, job equals prison, right? It's much better to be employed or have an endeavor that you choose rather than forced, right? Now, I was in a place before I came here, was born in 1950, and I chose to come here and do what this universe's administrator is known as Bob, and he, we were. I was a car hop at Las Vegas, right, and I was a angle, not an angel, angle. One of those dramatic folk that were like Vikings. I was one of those guys, but my job in Las Vegas was a car hop in front of a hotel, and Bob showed up in a real sweet car, and I was I was opening the door for him, and he was just about to give me the keys when he said, "Hey, kid, get in. We're gonna go take a ride." And we went to his titty bar, and it was called the Horny Dog. And the big neon light was this very naked girl who was bending over, an object, which they just show her bending over, and a horny dog. You know how a dog has the outside penis, and I guess that's his foreskin, and then there's a pink thing going like this, right? If you've ever had a dog, you've seen that. And And what is dog spelled backwards? Anyway, the neon is this amazingly beautiful woman, and red neon lips, red neon little nipples or big nipples with big aureolas, and a red neon hoo hoo, and the dog's penis going into the hoo hoo, but the neon light like blinking on and off. So you saw this. That was the neon light. Said horny dog, titty bar. And we went in, and there was two big thuggy kind of mobsters on either side, and they kind of gave Bob like a heads up. And he went in, and I'll pick up that story. But that's how I got here. We went there, and he gave me a opportunity that I could have refused, but it would have been really stupid to. I would have been, car hop for the rest of eternity. Not so bad, but still, when you're a stinky slime puppet, it's, kind of a step up to be born and come with a thing to do that you can have a lot of fun doing, right? And there's a lot of stuff to learn, to understand, to be part of. So I chose to do that, right? But I was inside my mom's uterus in the womb being formed, and I was being totally gushed with tobacco and alcohol and everything else my parents were addicted to, and that was what genetically made me what I am. And then I was choked to death at birth, right? Somebody wanted to get rid of this boy, right? But I've always had an amazing guardian angel watching my back. So I've had, when people go on about, oh, my life has been so hard. Oh, in fifth grade, the gym teacher made fun of me. Oh, really? That's all? Really? Okay. That boy, your life is, Now I went to Yugoslavia during '84 during the Olympics. I was in Sarajevo, amazing city, just beautiful, just amazing, amazing place. And that was like the high end of the Russian communist satellites, right? They had the most of everything, and I had in this hotel an amazing room that was like the toilet, the bathroom, the John in that hotel room was larger than my apartment in New York. The toilet. Now, the toilet is the seat you sit on. That's the toilet. The English call the room that the toilet is in, or the crapper. The guy who invented the toilet, his name was Crapper. I'm not kidding you. And his job was, not only did he invent the toilet, he invented it because his job was to wipe the asshole of the king and make sure his asshole was good, right? Good to go. And the queen too, right? And he just got so sick of it that he invented, because he had to deal with the shit, right? The diarrhea, the urine. He was getting covered with it pretty much all the time. And so he devised a way that they could go into a closet where they could have privacy. And that's why it's called the WC, or the water closet, right? Because the water was a tank above, flushed the water down the pipe, took it out to a place where you didn't see it, right? How many are you? There's 0, but 5 thumbs up. So, if you want to get a hold of me, at the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. The Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. And I'd really love it. This month is my birthday month, and that's why, this is also Black History Month. I am an African American that's melanin challenged. Because I was brought up in Harlem, and half of my friends were black, and I didn't see them as black. When I was brought, my grandma picked me up and took me to her apartment. Her next door neighbor, her upstairs neighbor, was You know, I just called her Mamo, right? Because she had the two biggest breasts you ever saw. She just had a baby, and she was breastfeeding this little baby girl. And the first 5 months when my grandma brought me there, I didn't stay with my grandma. I stayed up at Mamo's house. And Mamo's, she had 5 other kids, plus this little girl, baby girl, and me, right? So 6, 7, I was the seventh, seventh son. She called me her seventh son, right? And she would breastfeed both of us at the same time, right? So I was, the first year I lived up there, and because my grandma really, she's an old lady, she was not, but Mamo was, a mother, she was like the Venus goddess mother, unbelievable. And I grew up there, so I was already 6 months. I spent a year with her, so I was a year and 6 months living in a black family, right? And in the back lot, she had a garden, and my grandma and her, had the garden back there. And they were pumping a lot of good food. And they had chickens, so we had eggs and chicken and really good food. And all up and down Second Avenue and Eighth Avenue, there were every kind of store of every kind of nationality you could think. And, Mamo got me walking. By the time I was 8, 9 months, I was running around, right? And and my black brothers and sisters, they were just so sweet. And my twin, I called her my twin, Emily, and she and we just loved each other. We slept in the same bed. Mama didn't have another bed, so she just put us together, and we just hugged and cooed like two little piglets, and we were fed all the time, and our brothers and sisters took care of us with love, right? They cleaned our butts, like Earl Crapper did to the Queen, and took care of us. And they didn't have Pampers in those days; they had diapers. So those kids cleaned our butts, washed us off, swaddled us, and cleaned the diapers. There were no. They cleaned the diapers. No diaper service, right? So that's when I grew up, So first year and 6 months, I was a black little boy, I was like the movie The Jerk, Steve Martin. But I learned how to dance. We all dance, We're dancing because we had a record player. And Mama loved jazz. She loved R&B, right? And the house, where everyone performed, was just down the street. We would, we went up before I was 2 years old. I was going there with them, and they had the section where all the kids hung out. Parents kind of had places to sit on the chair, and the kids. There was a section over here, and we were clapping and singing and dancing and just having a great time. And that's how these kids became great artists, because they were watching that. Plus, we went to the Baptist church that Mama went to. My grandma would go there, even though she was Roman Catholic. She really, wasn't a big fan. She was a big fan of God and Jesus, but not so much the Roman Catholic Church. She came from Italy. She knew what it was. She was oppressed by it. She grew up poor, right? Anyway, so here it is, 5:47. I'm going to go check on things, and I'll come back, 7 o'clock, give or take, right? Between 7 and 7:30, I'll come back and pick up the show, right? And this show is about addiction. And again, what I grew up in was unconditional love and amazing culture, that was, the Amazing Grace, that was that culture, Amazing Grace. And every nuance of my existence, every fiber, I oozed God and Jesus, but not in a phony kind of way. Oh, I read. Oh, it's all in the book. It's all in the book. The book, everything else is wrong. Oh, you're wrong. You're wrong. Oh, fornication. Well, man, if you read the Old Testament, everybody was fornicating, and it was all right with God, you know, and so begat so and so, and then some old guy couldn't get his old wife, so he had it with somebody else, and that was okay. Fornication was a gift given to us by God. It's not a dirty thing. And if you think it is a dirty thing, right? If you get, and then because you're so oppressed by that dirty thing, you have to watch pornography to masturbate. Even that's not bad. If it's, showing um, a healthy version of fornication, that's not bad. But when it gets perverted, when you start looking at little girls and you are 44, that's or 82, or 22 or 32 or 54 or 64 or 14. No, because that's has come from a perverted motif. And that perversion usually has a connection with what is known as demonic. Because when you get rid of love, which is the only truth there is, you're talking about demonic. So we live in a demonic world. This, they want to have a war in Ukraine. That's demonic, You can't listen to someone else's opinion and you deplatform them, defund them, crush them. That's demonic, When you start passing laws that take, love out of the equation, that's demonic, And that's kind of what we're looking at right here, right now. So we have a very addicted society, right? And buying things by getting that shot of into your brain on on the you buy shit on the computer. You don't have the experience of shopping or talking to the person in the store or any of that. I mean, that's the real essence of when you go, you meet the shopkeeper, talk to them, you interact with them, they give you their advice of what you might need. And instead of just pushing a button and getting a little charge, and then thinking that, oh, if I buy these shorts that show up my junk, I'll be thought as sexy or cool, I don't think so, I mean, virtually all the clothes I have, I either got at the thrift store or dumpster or on sale at, Walmart's or Kmart's, but Kmart doesn't exist anymore. But there were a lot of great stores that don't exist anymore. Everything's, coming out of the computer. But like, this very nice shirt, I got it out of a dumpster. Washed it. It was good. Somebody, and, that wasn't mixed in with, food. It was just in a bag, there where the garbage was. I picked up the bag. Oh, this is good stuff. Okay? So some of the best stuff I ever got, is I think it's called a ground score, But anyway, I diverse. So I'll see you in about 2 hours, okay? So it's now, oh, look at that, 5:55. Perfect. How many? And 58 minutes and 58 seconds. This is the time to go have dinner and check the laundry. Love you guys. See you later.